Sarah opened her bank account app and stared at the number, $47.19. That was all that stood between her and homelessness. 2 weeks earlier, she'd been fired from her waitressing job. The manager said she'd taken too many days off, days she'd needed to stay home when her daughter was sick. 2 weeks earlier, she'd been fired from her waitressing job. The manager said she'd taken too many days off, days she'd needed to stay home when her daughter was sick. Rent was due in 14 days, $950. She had $47 and a 6-year-old daughter depending on her. She'd applied to 23 jobs in 10 days. 19 ignored her, for said she was overqualified, code for too old, too desperate, too risky. Her parents were gone. Her ex-husband sent nothing. Her friends had their own problems. Sarah was alone with $47 and 14 days. That night, while her daughter slept, Sarah searched desperately how to make money fast with no money to start. She found something. Not a get-rich scheme. Not a miracle. Just a real way to exchange skills for money, immediately online. 6 weeks later, Sarah would have her rent paid and $1,000 coming in every single month. But first, she had to survive the next 14 days. Sarah's life had been unraveling slowly for months before the final collapse. 32 years old, divorced for 2 years, raising her daughter Emma alone on a waitress salary that barely covered their tiny 2-bedroom apartment. The rent was $950, more than half her income. After utilities, groceries, gas, daycare when she worked, there was never anything left. No savings, no buffer, no room for error. The job had been brutal but necessary. She worked dinner shifts 5 nights per week at a chain restaurant, coming home at 11 p.m., exhausted and smelling like fried food. Emma would already be asleep, dropped off by the neighbor who watched her for $40 per week. Money Sarah could barely afford but had no choice but to spend. The tips averaged about $150 per week. The hourly wage was $7.25, which brought her total income to roughly $1,100 monthly. From that, $950 went to rent, $150 to utilities. $40 per week for childcare was $160 monthly. That left negative $160 before she'd bought groceries, gas, or anything else. She'd been running a deficit for months, accumulating debt on a credit card that was now maxed at $3,200. When Emma got strep throat and needed to stay home for 3 days, Sarah had no choice but to miss work. When Emma's school had a snow day and closed, Sarah missed work. When Emma had a field trip and needed a parent chaperone, Sarah had to choose, disappoint her daughter or lose a shift's pay. She chose her daughter every time. The restaurant manager didn't care about the reasons. After the 3rd absence in 6 weeks, he called her into the office and said the words that destroyed everything. "This isn't working out. Today's your last day." The morning after being fired, Sarah woke up to Emma asking for breakfast. She made scrambled eggs with the last 4 eggs in the refrigerator and wondered what she'd make tomorrow when the food ran out. She had $47. Rent was due in 14 days. She needed $950. The math was impossible. She spent that entire day applying for jobs, retail, food service, cleaning, anything. She applied to 23 positions. She emphasized her availability, her work ethic, her reliability, carefully avoiding mentioning the single mother part because she'd learned that killed applications. By evening, she'd received 4 automated rejections and silence from the rest. The panic started to set in around midnight. Sarah sat at her kitchen table with a calculator, trying to make numbers work that couldn't work. If she didn't pay rent, they'd be evicted. She had nowhere to go. Her parents had died in a car accident 3 years earlier. The reason her marriage had fallen apart, the grief too much for her ex to handle. He'd left, moved across the country, sent nothing. She had no siblings. Her closest friends were also single mothers barely surviving themselves. There was no one to borrow from, no one to ask for help. She looked at Emma's bedroom door, heard her daughter's soft breathing, and felt the crushing weight of sole responsibility. This child depended entirely on her, and she had $47 and no job. That's when Sarah did what desperate people do at 2 a.m. She went online searching for answers. How to make money fast. Emergency cash jobs. Make money online immediately. Most results were scams or required money to start. But one thing kept appearing: freelancing. People were making real money doing real work online: writing, virtual assistants, data entry, customer service. No boss, no schedule, just skills for money immediately. Sarah spent the next morning learning about freelancing while Emma was at school. She researched platforms: Upwork, Fiverr, Freelancer. She read success stories and failure warnings. The pattern was clear. People who succeeded had skills clients needed and were willing to work for less initially to build reviews. Sarah made a list of what she could do. She'd manage schedules at the restaurant. That was administrative work. She'd trained new servers. That was teaching and documentation. She'd handled customer complaints. That was customer service. She could type fast and write clearly. That was data entry and content writing. These weren't impressive skills, but they were real and marketable. By noon, Sarah had created profiles on 3 platforms. She positioned herself as virtual assistant and customer service specialist, detail-oriented, fast response, reliable. Her rate, $8 per hour, below the $15 to $25 most charged. But she needed to break through with no reviews. She spent the afternoon crafting her first 10 proposals. Each one was customized to the specific job, showing she'd read the requirements and had a plan. Her hands shook as she hit submit on the first one. By midnight, she'd sent all 10 and received one response: "Your rate seems too low. Are you experienced enough?" Sarah replied honestly, "I'm new to freelancing but not new to the work. I'm pricing low while I build reviews. If you're not satisfied with my first deliverable, you don't have to pay me. I just need a chance to prove I can help." The client hired her. The job: organize a chaotic inbox and create a filing system. Time estimate: 4 hours. Payment: $32. Sarah's first freelance job. She started immediately, working from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. after Emma went to bed. She organized 2,300 emails, created 15 folders with clear labels, set up filtering rules, and wrote a guide for maintaining the system. She delivered it at 2:17 a.m. with a detailed explanation of what she'd done. The client marked it complete 6 hours later with a 5-star review. Exceeded expectations. Extremely thorough. Will hire again. The $32 hit Sarah's account the next morning. It wasn't much, but it was proof. Proof she could generate income without a boss approving her existence. Proof that being a single mother didn't disqualify her. Proof that she could work while Emma slept and earn money her daughter would never know required midnight hours and sacrifice. Sarah immediately sent 5 more proposals. 2 clients hired her that same day. One needed customer service email responses written. 20 emails at $2 each equals $40. Another needed data entry from scanned documents. 3 hours at $8 equals $24. She worked from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m., completing both jobs. $64 earned. Combined with the previous 32, she now had $96 in freelance earnings. She'd made almost $100 in 3 days of evening work after Emma went to bed. The realization hit her. If she could make $100 every 3 days, that was roughly $1,000 per month. $1,000 wouldn't pay all her bills. She still needed another income source, but $1,000 monthly would cover her utilities, food, and Emma's needs. $1,000 was the difference between drowning and surviving. Sarah scaled up her proposal volume. She started sending 15 proposals per day, customized but efficient. Her acceptance rate was about 20%, 3 jobs per day. She raised her rate slightly to $10 per hour once she had 5 5-star reviews. Jobs started coming in steadily: customer service, email management, data entry, basic administrative tasks. By day 10, with 4 days remaining until rent was due, Sarah had earned $380 through freelancing. Combined with her original $47, she had $427. She was still $523 short of rent. The panic hadn't gone away, but now it was mixed with something else: momentum. For the first time in years, Sarah felt like she was moving forward instead of drowning. On day 11, Sarah made a desperate decision. She posted on a local Facebook group, "Single mom freelancer offering cleaning, organization, or any help needed for quick cash." Reliable and thorough. She got 3 responses. One woman needed her house deep cleaned before guests arrived, offered $80 for 4 hours of work. Another needed help organizing a garage, $60 for 3 hours. A third needed yard work, $50 for 2 hours. Sarah took all three. She asked her neighbor, the same one who used to watch Emma after school, if she could watch Emma for one full Saturday. She offered $40. The neighbor agreed. That Saturday, Sarah worked 9 hours straight doing physical labor. She cleaned bathrooms, organized closets, hauled boxes, raked leaves, scrubbed floors. Every muscle ached. But at the end of the day, she had $190 in cash. Combined with her freelance earnings of $480 by day 12, Sarah now had $670 toward her $950 rent, plus her original $47 meant $717 total. She was $233 short with 2 days until rent was due. Those last 2 days, Sarah worked like she'd never worked before. She took every freelance job she could handle, working 18-hour days, caring for Emma during the day, frantically completing freelance work during every moment Emma was occupied, then working until 4 a.m. after Emma slept. She completed 11 projects in 48 hours. She earned $271. On the morning rent was due, Sarah opened her banking app, $988. She transferred $950 to her landlord. Balance remaining, $38. She'd done it, barely, desperately, exhaustingly, but she'd done it. Sarah sat at her kitchen table and cried, not from despair this time, but from relief. She'd earned over $900 in 14 days through sheer force of will, accepting any work she could find, sleeping 4 hours per night, and refusing to give up. Sarah had survived the immediate crisis, but she wasn't safe. She had $38 and 30 days until next rent was due. The difference now, she knew she could earn money. She'd proven it, but she'd nearly killed herself doing it, and that pace wasn't sustainable with a daughter to raise. She needed to be smarter, more strategic, higher value. Sarah analyzed what she'd learned. The freelance work paid better per hour than the physical labor, didn't destroy her body, and could be done after Emma slept. She decided to focus entirely on building her freelance income to a consistent $1,000 per month, enough to cover everything except rent, which she'd need to solve differently. She created a system: wake at 5 a.m., work on freelance until 7 a.m. when Emma woke, get Emma ready and to school by 8 a.m., work on proposals and client communication from 8:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., pick up Emma at 3 p.m., evening with Emma from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m., full attention, full presence. Emma to bed by 8:30 p.m., work on freelance deliverables from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m., sleep from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m., for hours of sleep. It wasn't healthy, but it was temporary. It was survival. Sarah also upgraded her approach. Instead of accepting $8 to $10 per hour, she started positioning herself for higher value work. She took a free weekend to learn basic social media management through YouTube tutorials. She learned Canva for creating graphics. She studied email marketing basics. These skills commanded $15 to $25 per hour. Within 2 weeks of implementing her system, Sarah was earning consistently 20 hours per week of freelance work at an average of $15 per hour equals $300 per week, which equals $1,200 per month. She'd crossed the $1,000 threshold, but rent was still the monster, $950 she couldn't cover with freelancing alone. The solution came from an unexpected place. One of her freelance clients mentioned she was looking for someone to manage her Etsy shop's customer service for 10 hours per week. Ongoing, guaranteed. Sarah negotiated $20 per hour. That was $200 per week or $800 per month consistently. Combined with her other freelance work, Sarah now had a reliable $2,000 per month in income. 2 months after being fired from the restaurant, Sarah's life had stabilized into a new rhythm. She was earning $2,000 to $2,200 monthly through freelancing. Rent was $950 covered. Utilities $150 covered. Groceries $300 covered. Emma's needs $200 covered. She even had $500 left over, money she was saving in a separate account, building an emergency fund for the first time in her adult life. But the cost was real. Sarah was exhausted, 4 hours of sleep per night for 8 weeks had taken its toll. She'd lost weight. She had permanent dark circles under her eyes. She was irritable and tired. Emma started asking, "Mommy, why are you always on the computer?" That question broke something in Sarah. She'd escaped the immediate crisis, but she'd created a different kind of trap, working so much that she was barely present for the daughter she was working so hard to support. Sarah made a decision. She needed to work less but earn the same or more. The only way to do that was to raise her rates significantly and focus on higher-value clients. She stopped accepting work under $25 per hour. She repositioned herself from virtual assistant to operations manager for small online businesses. She created case studies showing the results she delivered for clients: time saved, money earned, systems implemented. She raised her rate to $35 per hour for new clients and told existing clients she'd be raising rates to $30 per hour in 30 days. Most agreed immediately. The math changed dramatically. If she worked just 15 hours per week at $35 per hour, that was $525 per week or $2,100 per month. Same income as before, but working 15 hours instead of 30 hours. That extra 15 hours per week went back to Emma and to sleep. Sarah started having dinner with her daughter every night. She stopped working past 10 p.m. She slept 6 hours instead of 4. Her health improved. Her relationship with Emma improved. And surprisingly, her income increased because higher-paying clients valued her expertise and gave her more work. For months after being fired, Sarah received an email that would change her trajectory again. One of her clients wrote, "You've been so helpful managing our customer service. Would you be interested in hiring and training a small team to expand the service? We'd pay you to manage them, and you'd keep the difference between what we pay you and what you pay them." Sarah had never managed a freelance team before, but she understood the opportunity immediately. If she hired 3 people at $15 per hour and charged the client $35 per hour per person, she'd make $20 per hour per person, $60 per hour total for work she wasn't directly doing. She'd become a business owner, not just a freelancer. She started small. She hired 1 virtual assistant from the Philippines at $12 per hour, fair pay in that economy. She trained her using the systems she'd developed. She charged the client $30 per hour for that person's work. She made $18 per hour on work someone else did. The assistant worked 20 hours per week. That was $360 per week or $1,440 per month in profit for Sarah. Money she earned from managing and quality control, not from doing the work directly. Sarah hired a second assistant, then a third. Her role shifted from doing customer service to managing quality, training new team members, and ensuring client satisfaction. Her monthly income structure now looked like her own freelance work at 15 hours per week at $35 per hour equals $525 per week or $2,100 monthly. Team management profit from 3 assistants at $18 per hour profit times 60 hours weekly equals $1,080 weekly or $4,320 monthly. Total monthly income, $6,420, from $47 and fired to over $6,000 per month in 4 months. But more important than the money was the time. Sarah was working 25 hours per week instead of 40. She had her evenings with Emma. She slept 7 hours per night. She'd built something that generated income beyond her direct hours. A real business, not just a job. The single mother who'd been desperate and alone had become an entrepreneur, employing others and providing for her daughter with margin, not just survival. 6 months after being fired, Sarah got a call from her old restaurant manager. He'd heard she was doing something with computers and wanted to know if she'd consider coming back. They'd make her a shift lead, $11 per hour, and she could pick her schedule. Sarah almost laughed. 6 months ago, that call would have saved her life. Now it was offering her roughly $1,700 monthly to work 40-plus hours per week in a job she'd hated. She was currently making $6,400 monthly, working 25 hours per week from home, spending evenings with her daughter, building a business that grew without her direct effort. "I appreciate you thinking of me," Sarah said politely, "but I'm running my own business now and it's going really well. Thank you, though." After she hung up, Sarah sat quietly for a moment. The contrast was staggering. 6 months ago, fired, broke, desperate, no options, $47, crying at her kitchen table at 2 a.m. wondering how she'd keep her daughter housed. Today, business owner, 6,000 plus monthly income, freedom, options, savings growing, excited about the future, present for her daughter. The transformation hadn't been comfortable. It had required sleeping 4 hours per night for weeks. It had required accepting any work available, no matter how menial. It had required learning new skills through free resources while exhausted. It had required believing she could create value when the entire world seemed to be saying she couldn't. But Sarah had learned something profound. Desperation is either a prison or a catalyst. Most people let it become a prison. They freeze, they give up, they accept victimhood. Sarah had used it as catalyst. She'd let it burn away every excuse, every comfort, every hesitation until nothing remained except pure forward motion. She wasn't smarter than other people. She wasn't more talented. She wasn't luckier. She was just desperate enough to refuse to stay trapped, and that desperation had converted into determination, which had converted into skills, which had converted into income, which had converted into freedom. That was the formula. Desperation plus action equals transformation. 8 months after being fired, Sarah did something she never thought possible. She moved. Not because she was evicted, but because she chose to. She found a better apartment in a better neighborhood with better schools, $1,350 per month instead of $950. She could afford it easily. More than afford it, she had margin. She also did something even more meaningful. She started saving for Emma's college fund. $50 per month initially, a tiny amount to most people, but to Sarah it represented abundance. She was making enough not just to survive but to plan for her daughter's future. That shift from survival to planning represented a psychological transformation as significant as the financial one. Sarah also started helping others. She wrote a detailed post in a single mother's Facebook group explaining exactly what she'd done, how she'd started freelancing with zero money, what platforms she'd used, what skills she'd offered, how she'd raised her rates, how she'd built a team. She offered to answer any questions for free. The post got 173 comments and 42 private messages. Women in situations identical to where Sarah had been 6 months ago, fired, broke, desperate, alone. She spent hours responding to every single message, sharing her proposal templates, explaining her pricing strategy, encouraging them to just start. 3 months later, she started getting messages. I followed your advice and made my first $300 freelancing. Thank you. I just hit $1,000 per month and quit my toxic job. You showed me this was possible. Sarah realized her story wasn't just about her anymore. It was proof for everyone who felt trapped that escape was possible. That being broke, being a single parent, having no degree, having no money to invest, none of those were actually barriers. They felt like barriers, but they were just starting points. The real barrier was believing you couldn't create value. Once Sarah had abandoned that belief and simply started offering her skills in exchange for money, everything changed. Not instantly, not magically, but progressively, compoundingly, irreversibly. 8 months from $47 to $6,000 plus per month. From desperation to freedom. From victim to entrepreneur. From trapped to teaching others how to escape. 1 year after being fired from the restaurant, Sarah's business had evolved beyond what she'd imagined possible. She was managing a team of 7 virtual assistants across 3 continents, serving 12 clients, and generating between $8,000 and $10,000 monthly. Her personal work hours, 15 to 20 hours per week. Emma was thriving in her new school. Sarah had built an emergency fund of $8,000, enough to cover 6 months of expenses. She'd paid off her $3,200 credit card debt completely. She had money in savings for the first time in her adult life. But the numbers told only part of the story. The real transformation was internal. Sarah had discovered that she wasn't the person she'd thought she was. She'd believed she was just a waitress, just a single mother, just someone who'd made bad choices and was stuck with the consequences. The past year had destroyed those beliefs entirely. She wasn't just anything. She was someone who could create value from nothing. She was someone who could learn skills through free resources. She was someone who could build a business without capital, connections, or credentials. She was someone who could employ others and provide value to clients. She was someone who could survive the impossible and turn it into opportunity. That identity shift, from victim to creator, was worth more than any dollar amount. Sarah kept the eviction notice from that desperate night. She framed it and hung it in her home office with a note underneath. "This terrified me once. Now it reminds me that the worst moments become the catalysts for the best transformations if you refuse to give up." She also kept a screenshot of her bank account showing $47.19, not as a reminder of poverty, but as proof that where you start doesn't determine where you end. Decisions determine outcomes, not circumstances. The woman with $47.14 to rent had decided she would find a way or make a way. She'd chosen action over paralysis, learning over excuses, persistence over surrender. And those choices, repeated thousands of times over 12 months, had created a completely different life. On the 1-year anniversary of being fired, Sarah took Emma out for dinner, a nice restaurant, the kind she used to work at but could never afford to eat at. Emma ordered whatever she wanted. Sarah didn't check prices. Afterward, Sarah asked Emma if she remembered the hard time they'd had last year. Emma said, "When you were on the computer a lot?" Sarah nodded. "I was scared we'd lose our home," Sarah explained gently. "But I found a way to make money, and now we're safe. We'll always be safe because I learned how to take care of us." Emma thought about this, then said, "You're really good on the computer, Mommy." Sarah laughed and cried at the same time. Her daughter had no idea about the $47, the midnight work sessions, the physical and emotional exhaustion, the terror. And that was good. That was the whole point. Children should feel secure, not anxious about money. On the drive home, Sarah reflected on what she'd tell her past self. The woman sitting at that kitchen table with $47, certain everything was over. She'd tell her, "It's not over. It's actually just beginning. The desperation you feel right now is about to become your greatest teacher. It's going to strip away every excuse, every comfort, every reason not to try. And once those are gone, you're going to discover you can create value from nothing but your willingness to help others solve their problem. You're going to work harder than you've ever worked. You're going to sleep less than you should. You're going to doubt yourself constantly. But you're also going to prove to yourself that you're not trapped, you're not helpless, and you're not defined by your circumstances. You're going to go from $47 to over $8,000 monthly, from fired to business owner, from victim to mentor, from scared to secure. And most importantly, you're going to teach your daughter that when life knocks you down, you get back up. Not someday, not when conditions are perfect, but immediately with whatever you have, and you figure it out as you go. That lesson is worth more than any dollar amount. Sarah pulled into her apartment parking lot, the nice complex she'd chosen, not the one she'd been forced into, and looked up at their lit windows. 1 year ago, she'd thought her life was ending. Today, she understood it had actually been beginning. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. But only if you refuse to let it define you as a victim and instead use it as fuel to become something more.